In this After Effects tutorial, we are going to create a bouncing logo animation. Let's get started. So choose new composition, choose the settings, 1920 by 1080, frame rate by 30, duration 8 seconds, background color black, and give it a name. Hit OK, and first thing we want to do is create our background. So right click, new, solid, name it BG for background, enter, and our background is here. So we want to give this an effect called gradient ramp. So go over here to effects and presets, type in gradient, double click on gradient ramp, and we got some settings to adjust. Start color, make sure to give it a dark blue color, and end color, make it black. Ramp shape, change it to radial ramp, and we want to pull this points like that, and this will act as our background. So ramp scatter, change it to 50, and next we want to create our shape. So right click, new, shape layer, make sure to choose those, so fill at solid color, and make sure to not have any kind of strokes, so stroke at none. And by going over here, left click and hold, we got this options, rectangle tool, and draw a rectangle like that. And we want to center its anchor point, so hold Control, click twice over here, and it's centered. We want to align it horizontally, so it's centered in our background, and our first shape is done. Now we want to create our second shape, so right click, new, shape layer, and left click and hold ellipse tool, and while holding shift we create our second shape. We center its anchor point, Control, double click, and align it horizontally. I'll move it a little bit up while holding shift with move tool. And now we want to rename those shapes so we know what they are. So select our layer, press enter, and rename those so we know what they are. And we want to animate those now. So we want to make this circle at the beginning to come out from nothing. So select circle, press T, and set a keyframe on opacity, make it 0, and go to first second and make it 100, so it comes from out of nothing, from 0 to 100. And right after it appears, we want to make it move down over here. So here at first second, press Shift P for position keyframes and set a keyframe on position right after it appears at first second, and go over here to 1 second 20 frames and move its X position to over here, move it down, make sure it lands, make sure it overlaps just a little. And I noticed that I haven't set the opacity for the circle to 100, so I'll change it back to 100. So we move its X position over here to where it lands, and we will move by 20 frames again. So we will use shift and page down to move by 10 frames, shift and page down again, so it's 20 frames. And we want to copy this first keyframe for circle, first position keyframe, and paste it over here. So Ctrl C to copy, Ctrl V to paste, so it moves back to where it was. And we go back to 1 second 20 frames, we select rectangle, and so right after it lands we press S and unlink those, set a keyframe on scale and move by 2 frames, and change this X scale by 150 and move 2 frames again, page down, page down. By pressing page down it moves by 1 frame, so we press twice, and change it back to 100, and we select all those position keyframes for circle, hit F9 to smooth out our animation, select graph editor, and if your graph doesn't look like this, right click and select edit speed graph, and select those, make an adjustment to the curve, a peak into the middle, and we got an animation like this for now. And next we go to 3 seconds and we copy those position keyframes for circle, Ctrl C, and we want to paste it over here to 3 seconds, paste it, and copy those as well for rectangle, scale keyframes, copy those and go over here to 3 seconds, 20 frames, and paste those over here. And we have it bouncing twice now. And next we go to 5th second, and right after it lands back up, we want to make this rectangle disappear and this circle to come into the middle and scale up. So right after it lands back up, I'm holding shift to align over here to this keyframe, and right after it lands back up, we are going to make this disappear. So set a keyframe on opacity, so press T and set a keyframe on opacity, move by 10 frames, so shift page down and set it to 0 so it disappears. And now we want to make this circle move into the center and scale up in the meantime, so select circle and press shift and S, so we got keyframes for scale as well. Set a keyframe on scale, go to 5th second and scale it up to 250, and we will make sure to move this down as well. So I'll hit Ctrl Home to make sure it's in the center, Ctrl Home. So this is the center, and I'm scrolling my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So we got it scaling up and moving at the same time. We will select those scale keyframes as well and hit F9, give it the same adjustment onto the keyframes. So we got it scaling like that. And lastly, we want to import our logo. So we go over here, project, over here, create a new composition, name it logo, change the dimensions 200 by 200, hit OK, and this is our logo placeholder, and we want to import our logo here, so we are going to import it and press S to scale it down, so scale it to 20, and over here, effects and presets, type in fill, double click and give it a white color. So our logo composition is done, and we go back to our main project, main comp, and drag our logo comp over here, and we will view those shape layers keyframes. So we will select those and press U, and right after the circle scales up, we want to make our logo come from out of nothing as well. So right after it starts scaling up, we select our logo, press S for scale, set a keyframe on it and change the scale to 0, and
whenever it finishes scaling, we change the scale keyframes. We set a keyframe on scale by 100%, and we do the same adjustments over here on those keyframes. So select those, F9, graph editor, and do the same adjustments to the curves, and we will be having an animation like that. And lastly, I will add this circle a little blur when it's moving. So as you can see, when it's moving, it has got no blur. And to make it more realistic, I'll select circle and choose this, check this for motion blur, and as you can see, now we got some motion blur. And if I were to deselect that, it's got no blur. So I'll select it, and that will be it for our animation.